I bet you thought this series was finished after I did videos talking about the most expensive game for every Xbox, Nintendo, and Sony console. Well, you'd be wrong, because we haven't covered everyone's favorite dead console maker, Sega. As someone who owns every Sega home console from the Master System to the Dreamcast, and the original Shenmue being my favorite game of all time, these systems hold a special place in my heart. Like my other videos in this series, prices will be in US dollars at the time of writing this script in early January of 2025, and obviously things are subject to change. So without further ado, here's the list. Starting off with the Master System, we have James Buster Douglas Knockout Boxing. Originally released in Japan under the name Final Blow, the game was renamed and re-released in the West right after James Douglas's 1990 upset victory over Mike Tyson. Players control one of 5 selectable boxers, moving them left or right, timing punches to best their opponent. Overall, it's a pretty standard looking boxing game. You can pick this one up for $340 loose or $1050 complete in box. Next up is the console whose marketing campaign has gone down in history, the Sega Genesis. Subject to many schoolyard debate in the early 90s, I bought my personal Genesis for $1.75 in a senior center in rural Alberta in the early 2000s. Unfortunately for me, it wasn't bundled with a copy of Blockbuster World Championships 2. This was a cartridge produced by game publisher Acclaim, containing watered-down versions of NBA Jam Tournament Edition and Judge Dredd. In the United States in 1995, Blockbuster held regional tournaments in its stores across the country, declaring store champions, who would be sent to compete at GamePro's headquarters in San Francisco. Winners were given the option of choosing their prize, either a Super Nintendo with a special version of Donkey Kong Country, or a Sega Genesis. Not only were a handful of the Genesis cartridges made, but unlike the prize of the Super Nintendo, where contestants got to keep the Donkey Kong Country card, Acclaim ordered copies of the Genesis card to be destroyed. The number that survived is anyone's guess. The current market price is about $5,230. The introduction of CD technology to gaming in the early 90s felt like a leap forward in a few ways. The ability to hold more data in such an affordable package and enabling the use of full motion video looked as though the future had arrived early. The Sega CD is a strange beast. It was in many ways its own machine with an exclusive library of games, but also totally useless without a Genesis to attach to. There are some pretty interesting titles for this console, most expensive of which is KO Flying Squadron. In this pretty standard side-scrolling shoot-'em-up, KO will have you dodging projectiles and collecting power-ups while following the story of a girl named Rami riding her trusty dragon Spot. The game takes place during the KO era of the Edo Shogunate, which was roughly between 1865 and 1868. You can grab a copy for yourself for around 1,000 loose or 2,500 complete in box. Speaking of weird add-on consoles, the 32X is up next. I always thought it looked like a mushroom growing out of my Genesis. The 32X has one of the smaller console libraries around, with only 40 games, so going for a complete set isn't all too difficult. If you are going for all 40, the one that will hurt your wallet the most is Spider-Man Web of Fire. This side-scrolling action-adventure game from 1996 was the last game released for the 32X, and Sega dropped support for the console soon after, resulting in a relatively small number of copies being sold. It was also the last Marvel Comics licensed game from Sega until 2008's Iron Man. Web of Fire is currently going for $674 loose and just over $1,500 complete in box. The Sega Saturn is an often forgotten console in the West, but is a very cool platform home to some absolute bangers. Panzer Dragoon, anyone? The number one expensive game here is going to require a bit of explanation, however. The arcade racing hit Daytona USA is a staple Saturn game that is far from uncommon. What isn't a staple is the ultra-rare Netlink edition of the game, which made use of the Netlink Internet modem adapter for the Saturn. This allowed you to play the game online against other people, and notably, it's even still possible to play online today using voice over IP. The game was only purchasable through Sega's online store and is believed to be the single rarest Saturn game. Current market prices for this one are around $4,900 loose and a whopping $9,000 complete. Last but certainly not least, the Dreamcast. In my opinion, this is the coolest name for a console of all time, and it pains me that this was Sega's final entry in the console space. Even today, when I pick up the Dreamcast's controller, it somehow feels both retro and futuristic at the same time. Despite not owning one myself until about 2017 or so, it feels oddly nostalgic to use. Playing through the original Shenmue on this thing is still one of the most magical experiences I've had in regards to gaming. What I don't have is the most expensive title, which is a game by the name of Cannon Spike. A game from Capcom, this top-down multi-directional shooter is filled with references to other Capcom titles. The name of the game itself is the name of a move by Street Fighter's Cammy, and the names of playable characters feature similar nods. These include Cammy and Charlie from the Street Fighter series, Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins, the original characters Shiba, Shintaro, and Simone based on Siva from the Three Wonders, and Lin Kurosawa from Alien vs. Predator. You can pick this one up for $200 loose, or just over $300 complete in box. And that wraps up another video in the most expensive series. I hope you learned a thing or two. I know I did when researching for this one. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment. Do you own any of these games? Are you looking to pick any of them up? Let me know down below. Until next time, thanks for watching.